Tonight, a grandmother survives 17 hours trapped in a car that plunged off a New South Wales highway.
3 people saved after a boat catches fire off Sydney.
Police commandeer a barge to corner 2 suspects in a Gold Coast canal.
And a big blow for the Knights and the Blues.
This is NBN News with Natasha Beyersdorf and Paul Lobb.
Good evening. A grandmother has spent 17 hours trapped in the wreckage of her car in near freezing conditions, with the world oblivious to her whereabouts. Authorities say she may not have been found at all, but for one desperate phone call and some smart police work.
A white speck buried deep in the bush reveals a remarkable story of survival. Lynette Williams rescued from the wreckage of her crumpled car 17 hours after her ordeal began.
To sit in a car next to a creek, it would have been freezing.
On the New South Wales south coast, the 69-year-old Holden plunged several metres off the Princess Highway. Lynette was knocked unconscious. She was last seen at 11:30 on Wednesday night, leaving Maruya. Just half an hour later, her car spun out of control at Kayanga. Hours ticking by, it wasn't until 4:30 the next day Lynette regained consciousness and called relatives for help. Police using that phone call to ping her location in just 15 minutes.
And that's how we discovered that there was damage to an armed car railing, and the police got out and had a look.
The car covered in dirt, its wheels submerged in water, airbag deflated. Police, paramedics, SES, rural firefighters and the local volunteer rescue group swarmed the scene.
We found her to be in very good spirit. Like, she was having a bit of a chuckle, having a chat to the ambos.
Hidden down here away from passing motorists, there was simply no way Lynette was going to be spotted. So instead she sat in this wreckage, showered in glass and dirt, as night turned to day.
She's just fortunate that she made that phone call and we were able to make those inquiries and get her location from there. So yeah, very remarkable.
A very good outcome. That could have been very, very nasty.
Tonight, Lynette is with her family at Canberra Hospital. Early Walsh, NBN News.
It's the fishing trip that was over before it really began. 3 mates were forced to abandon their boat after flames ripped through the vessel off Sydney today. 2 jumped into the sea as nearby boaties scrambled to save them.
A Friday fishing trip that turned into a fire emergency. 3 men were on this boat when it burst into flames about 1 o'clock this afternoon.
I was just thinking the whole time that the boat is going to explode. Yeah, we need to put this fire out.
Benny Blair, Marco Ash and skipper Tarrant Lloyd say they just hooked a big catch in waters off Cronulla when they smelled smoke.
I was in fiberglass goes up smoke, like up to my hips, just like I couldn't even see my feet, and just throwing buckets of water onto smoke.
Tried to put it out, started getting buckets of water, tried to throw it out, but couldn't do very much.
Nearby boaties coming to their rescue as the trio threw each other life jackets and jumped off the burning vessel.
Massive shout out to the guy who picked us up on his boat.
As they were brought to shore, the men filmed as the 6.5-metre Caribbean Reef Rider was incinerated. Authorities warned other fishermen to stay away.
Please remain at least 300 metres clear of the vessel.
Fire crews were called off the job after it became obvious the boat couldn't be saved. Authorities let it burn offshore away from other vessels, but expect it will eventually wash up on the rocks along this coastline. The skipper says the boat was worth about $20,000 and he's not insured.
The worst part was there was also 6 beers, so pretty unlucky.
But they all plan to be back out on the water again tomorrow, this time on Benny's boat.
Plans are go to BCF, buy new fishing gear and get back on the water tomorrow.
A New South Wales electrician has been jailed for using his know-how to design missiles and weaponry for ISIL. A judge today said the 44-year-old father provided substantial assistance to the terror group.
When Haitham Zahab was arrested, he was an Islamic State fanatic. Today he was told that devotion would cost him at least 6 years and 9 months of his life.
The judge
gave his sentence, and it is what it is. But yeah, we just want him home.
Zahab moved from Western Sydney to a rural property in Young to escape the rat race and says he became obsessed after he saw the Assad regime using chemical weapons against civilians in Syria. So the 44-year-old electrician designed rockets which he covered in the IS flag. He also sent to an IS contact a 288-page report on a system that would alert the terror group to incoming laser-guided weapons. It was substantial assistance, the judge said today.
He did so with unwavering focus, at all times intent upon assisting Islamic State in its involvement in armed and violent hostilities overseas.
The judge described as fanciful Zahab's claims that at the time he believed Islamic State was a force for good in Syria. He said, like the rest of the world, Zahab knew the atrocities the group was responsible for and chose to ignore them. Zahab's family still doesn't believe he was radicalised and says his rejection of IS in court has put him at risk in Supermax.
He's pretty much put himself and his life on the line.
Zahab waved to those supporters as he was led away. Kelly Fedor, NBN News.
Police claim Hunter hospitality workers can rest a little easier tonight following the arrests of 3 people over a series of break-ins at bowling and golf clubs across the region. 2 of the accused faced court today, with one's bid for freedom knocked back.
They asked politely enough at first,
"Police right over the door!"
then forced their way inside. Heavily armed officers arrested 24-year-old Braden Ty at a fishing point address in a dawn raid yesterday. Police allege Braden, his older brother Frederick Ty and another 36-year-old man are responsible for 8 armed robberies across the Hunter between February and May.
Investigators located a firearm, ammunition, an axe, a motorcycle, clothing and documentation, and other items that were relevant to the investigation.
Whoever was responsible left empty-handed on some occasions, but got away with cash and property on others. Bullaroo Bowling Club was among the venues targeted.
Little clubs like ours, we don't have a lot of security around the area.
These were brazen acts of violence. People were just going to the club either to work or as there just to be there in general as a patron. And it's unacceptable behaviour.
The older brother applied for bail, but it was refused. Magistrate Stone saying while the case is circumstantial, he has to ensure the safety of the community.
A number of people were not just traumatised in relation to these offences, but some were actually physically harmed.
The brothers are due to face Toronto local court in August, the third man later this month. Sam Burbury, NBN News.
Latest figures have revealed a rise in murders at Lake Macquarie, reflecting a worrying trend statewide. But many other crimes are down across the region, and that has police praising the community.
Those on the thin blue line with some rare good news to share.
It is all about the healing power and connection of community, and I'm so heartened to see these great results.
According to the latest crime figures, Lake Macquarie has seen a 15% drop in malicious damage offences and a slight drop in robberies without a weapon. While in Newcastle, indecent assault was down 16.3%, while break-in enters into businesses and schools was down 11.6%.
We've had a lot of success in the last 12 months in particular with identifying those recidivist offenders, the ones that continually do it and really focus on targeting.
But domestic violence-related murders at Lake Macquarie increased.
One of the common features in those murders is that the offender and the victim knew each other.
Officers too well aware that there are faces behind all the latest numbers.
If people have their car stolen or their house broken into, they're saying, well, there are any crime stats. So I really feel for those people. And we've got a long way to go.
Madison Scott, NBN News.
Tradies ended up riding along with Strike Force Raptor police who raided a Burrugul home yesterday morning, helping the elite anti-bikie task force seize an entire kitchen allegedly built using stolen items. Nothing was spared, even the kitchen sink. Methamphetamine, prescription drugs, clothing, appliances and building materials were also taken away during the operation. A 28-year-old former Finks outlaw motorcycle gang member was arrested. He's been charged with 11 drug, weapon and property offences.
A mother who suffered an unimaginable loss has started an online petition calling for mandatory dash cams in cars. Michelle Underhill's 4-year-old daughter was killed in a North Coast road crash in 2015.
The circumstances of the crash that claimed the life of 4-year-old Elle Underhill are enough to break any parent's heart, making national news after it became known that her police officer father was one of the first people to arrive at the scene.
I don't wish a situation like this upon anybody. It's been horrendous. It's been a long, drawn-out process.
Babysitter Courtney Matthews was behind the wheel on that day in 2015, but when she was found guilty of 2 counts of negligent driving in April this year, there was no sense of closure and few real answers for the devastated Casino family.
And I feel like through the court case, if we'd had visible evidence of what went wrong, perhaps it wouldn't have dragged out for 40 months.
Elle would be 8 this year. Her mother Michelle now hopes to create a legacy that will help prevent others suffering some of their heartache, petitioning the Prime Minister to make dash cams in cars mandatory.
It could provide a lot of protection elements for people that aren't doing the wrong thing on the road. It's about having the extra evidence that doesn't leave families with questions. What went wrong? How did that happen? Why did that happen?
Questions that will always remain with the Underhills.
Definitely, 100%. They haven't been answered. Yes, there was momentary inattention, but what was it?
If you'd like to support Michelle's petition, go to the NBN News website and follow the links. Samantha Pote, NBN News.
Newcastle and Lake Macquarie Police are partnering to host a 5K fun run along the shores of the lake later this month. Officers are asking people to do the 5 for Police Legacy on Saturday, June 22.
It's going to be around 5 themes. Move a little more, beat a little better, stress a little less, connect a little more, and overall just be grateful for what you've got.
Legacy supports the families of fallen officers.
It's crunch time for Hunter students performing in the annual talent showcase Starstruck. Members of a mass choir warmed up their pipes at Newcastle Entertainment Centre this afternoon in one of the final rehearsals.
300 kids who have never met before, come from 60 different schools, all coming together and singing this one massive song, and it sounds fantastic.
Starstruck gets underway from next Friday.
Still to come, the accused Darwin shooter says he's sorry about what happened.